bodies. Do you feel that there's a different way of visualizing and understanding our bodies from the ancestral practices, thinking of that moment of birthing, and giving life to another? Maybe you're not thinking about this every day, but in a way that you think that is better to keep the identity of black peoples? Well, this summit that we just had, I think, leaves us with a great mission to continue building more and more women's circles and accompanying each other and understanding. And I think we know now we need to touch each other and then understand our body as our own temple. We need to reconcile ourselves with menstruation. We need to understand that the pain and having myomas and cysts is not normal. It shouldn't be normal that a woman is told to remove her uterus because that's not good for her anymore. These are our bodies. These bodies don't belong to men. These bodies don't belong to the Western world, if you want to see it that way. Okay, I won't have any more comeback questions. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you? I think some people are still hungry. Well, thank you for greeting me back, and I'm so glad to be here in this space. I think I imagined coming here, but I didn't know it would be so beautiful when it became a reality. And having Angela Davis and Francia Marquez and women of El Chontaduro Cultural House and others that I've been able to meet and greet in this process of seeking justice and resignifying our own lives. Just fabulous. This is just such an inspirational space for me. And I think I'm falling short with how I'm feeling being a part of all of this today. And I would also convey to you that my experience is that of a black woman that has lived her whole life on the eastern side of Cali City, under violence and marginalized area of Cali, where historically we've had to face systematic death every day, and not just death because of a bullet that can pierce your body, but also symbolic or psychological death, if you will. And when we speak about these elements that can hurt us, and when we talk about this injustice and the way it is expressed, we have cultural spaces such as the Chontaduro Cultural House to generate not just the space, but the political voices that allow for transformation and have better conditions. And this is what we're trying to do from El Chontaduro organization, but also in many other organizations from the eastern side of Cali and other regions throughout our country. And when we speak of building knowledge, I also use my experience from the Cultural House, and because from the different action lines that we have, we recognize that our own experience should be to build knowledge for others and try and bring down these ideas into more tangible expressions that can be better reflected in the individual life projects of someone, but the collective life project of a community. It is so important to understand and place ourselves under this mechanism. That's not an easy exercise to do or to achieve, trying to revert the logic of building knowledge that have been permeated by the Eurocentric and Western world, the dispossession ideology, where we're also trying to counteract and fight from the artistic and cultural spaces to say that what we're doing here is also valuable. What we're doing here can give a notion of sense to our African diaspora activities and history. And I highlight this because in the ways that policies have been drafted and the ways that justice has been imparted, we can recognize that these expressions from all our collectives of women have been erased, denied as part of our, we live in our daily livelihoods. And when I see women that I admire so much, and I have some of them right here today, I can see that with those elements that they can start identifying from their own life experience, you can transform that pain and those particular elements into a source of struggle, but also of transformation, and then move that to the political venue. And when we talk about artistic and cultural singing and dancing and other types of performance and healing processes, that we can bring about as positive for the construction elements in a cultural and artistic food to be able to engage in the political arena, such as the activities with the single moms from El Chontaduro, such as this.
Nuestra gente. Con música y alegría.
With music and joy.
Con música y alegría.
Con música y alegría. With music and joy.
Lo que les daba la gana.
And they did what they wanted with us. That your knowledge is the cure.
Somos
We are free and we are people as well.
más fuerza y
To be stronger, to be more rebellious. To be stronger and we can be more rebellious. More rebellious.
nuestras
Are curative plants as well. But you might laugh, but they are effective plants. You might laugh, but they are effective.
pero sí son efectivas. Y bueno, ¿qué más?
And what else can I say about our cantadoras, our traditional singers of the Pacific Coast, when we position ourselves politically as women that have held this society together and trying to use our health experience to transform in a free way, in the cimarron way. All right. Yes, Consuelo. Shall we continue?
Desde lo que hacemos. Yo me tengo que
So, about the political venue and what we do, I need to stand up right now, I think, because this is politics, what we're doing right now. And fashion, and in my case, since I was very small, I started working on fashion, small pieces of cloth, and it was four siblings, four sisters, and someone had to, put a dress together with whatever scraps of fabric we had left. And today, I'm the only one that's left, and it just gives me so much pride. And I'm gonna enjoy your reaction when I say this. I am 63 years old. 6'3". And I love when they, you know why I always say that? So you tell me, oh, but you don't look 63. But I am. I'm 63 and I've, you know, dove headfirst in this world of LGBTI community, but also in a very young community of fashion. People that are 19, 20, 21 years of age starting in fashion. I started when I was 59 years of age, going to the biggest fashion shows in the world because I brought ethnic styles and I wouldn't just leave it in a political discourse. And I had it working on high fashion in Spain when everything in the winter there, everything is black. Everything is turquoise blue. Everything is so gray. Everything is so brown. And this little body of mine brought oranges, such as the one I'm wearing, and put it right in the middle. I was the only one that did it. And people were trying to elbow me out of those spaces. And they said, this woman is not dressing properly. They were the ones that were not appropriately dressed. They were the sad people, the dead souls. I was stupendous. I was fabulous because politics is in your soul, is in your skin. And women are great politicians. And some of the strongest politicians. And when I started talking about politics, when I started saying this word and I was told, but I don't like politics. Well, that is a political statement. When you say, I don't like politics, you're exercising a political action of saying no to what you don't like. When this morning Etsy was saying, and I've known Etsy for a while, I'm not going to say how long I've known you, by the way, don't worry. But Paola, one of the younger girls, one of our babies as we'll be traveling together around the world, my dear Vice President, I'm not going to say how long I've known you either, but it has been for many years that I've seen you in your path, always talking about our purpose, about what we are bringing as a proposal of how to change the world. And when I was sitting on the couch of my flat in Madrid, and there's one tweet that came up, I'm going to be the next president of Colombia. I said, Francia has gone crazy. She's gone mad. But I called her because I'm crazier than her. 6 in the morning, I remember. I said, Francia, I'm the first one to back you up because you are so bold, you are so brave. And we need to be a little bit of risk takers. We need to take the risk of changing history. Now, when I do fashion, I try to make it fashion with a sense, and when I use this orange, I'm not just wearing it for no reason. I wear it to convey a message of strength, of light, of power, because this is what we are, and we shouldn't be ashamed because we've been criticizing ourselves so much. Oh, that color. Oh, that black person dressed in that bright color. He doesn't have style, but that's what gives us an identity. This is what, I mean, we've been champions for so long, and who can really tell that a woman that's 61 years old, because this happened 2 years ago, right? 61 years old would win the prize to the best novel designer in the Fashion Week in Dubai. This body standing in front of you. And I earned this saying, this is who I am. This is ethnic fashion with our style, with our bright colors, because I'm from African descent, and especially because I'm Afro-Colombian. That's why I earned that and won that. And that's why I'm going to say two things. Francia, this was a comment to you initially, and I did compose this in Spain in 2016. I'm riding the metro, bored with whatever, just after having one of so many fights that you need to overcome, around the world. I'm fighting adversity, and I dedicate this to you that I wrote, but I also dedicate it to one of our best female leaders, Angela. Thank you for being the leader that you are. I dedicated this to our African sisters, to each one of you attending here today. And it says, I'm a bad woman because I won't shut up, because I won't break down, because I shake off my tears, make my cleavage right, and start walking again, because I don't have a fragile look, because I'm a rebel, overwhelming and persistent woman, because when I arrive, people notice, and when I leave, people also know that I'm not longer there. I feel complete and wholesome, and the most important thing, I'm happy. I reaffirm myself. I'm a bad woman. I invite you to be naughty women so that we all raise our voices and can do it single-heartedly. And let's not forget that this is something that we have to do until dignity becomes the norm, until dignity does become the norm. Thank you.
Ahora me gustaría dar la bienvenida.
Now I want to welcome Astor Nidia Gongora, our great cultural performer and singer. Now let's start on this side, if we may. And now I'm going to be a little naughty as well. I wanna change this question a little bit, or tweak it, because we know that black people are builders and one of the greatest supporters of the most important ideas, the idea of freedom, in the Western world. It comes from the black community. And sometimes we forget about this. And I would like to ask you, Jurani, and Rukaya, and
No solamente
Dr. Dent, what are the strategies that we should put at play and the ones that we should favor the most so that we can nurture the arts and culture and so that we can spread these around? And not just how to build this structure, but also what ideas can we follow up with and what sensations do we need to convey and what cultural projects do we need to put together? Artistic languages that might be the best ones that you see in present times that we are sowing to embed the best political libertarian ideologies in black people. So let's start on this side now. Great. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of your panel. I think that for the youths and the organization I represent right now, it is a great honor to be here. We expect to continue attending. We don't just to have a few of us coming, but we call the seed beds that we have in our organization can be promoted. We call one of these seed beds Afro-Feminist Women of Choco. We're trying to empower young girls from this region of the Northwest Pacific coast of Colombia. One of the girls, if you remember in the morning, was telling us to love ourselves the way we are, to love our bodies and start understanding through workshops and through activities about the respect we need to have with menstruation. I think we need to talk without overzealousness with our girls and without being shy at all to understand these topics. And an important part of what we're putting together from the artistic venue, and because we are the cultural organization that is training artists and leaders that have that criteria, that have that capacity to discern, first of all, and then stand in front of others on a stage to confront them with their ideas and be able to sit down with other people that might have a lot of knowledge in other fields so that they can continue feeding that desire to, eat the whole world just a bite at a time. And from the org that I work with and through dancing and dance arts, being totally political, like you say, we denounce and we, through the bodies of the dancing youth groups that we have, trying to portray and understand and let others understand in these large venues the significance, and that our members of our collective can identify themselves in any of these venues. And what we want right now is that young people can become reference individuals and that have important positions and can become key opinion leaders, that these important young women can be seen now through their activity. And I don't know how to say this, that as someone that is laying down those first cornerstones so that we can continue edifying through the different schools where we're trying to train people to be leaders, where we are trying to make visible the different issues that we have in our territories and regions. Through dancing, we are denouncing everything happening in our own territory continuously, as it's the easiest way and safe way that we understand to be able to show this to the outside world. As many times we try to present a claim, we try to, tell others about what's happening. Sometimes it's not that easy. So through dancing, we can do it just as the cantadoras can do through their singing, and we just heard them. So the artistic work that we do is trying to reinforce the knowledge that we have been able to acquire from our elders. And I think one of the tasks we always have a production is research. Get to know about the topic that we are trying to explain to others, like what midwives can do for us in our communities. So interesting to see this ancestral profession, how to take it to an artistic exercise through dancing so that young women can understand what a midwife is, and then know a little bit more about their own bodies. That is so important.
Esther?
Hello. I hope this mic is better. So I will be speaking in French. If you can please use your headphones, I will wait for a couple of seconds. And I would just say I'm so grateful for you having me here. Can everybody hear me okay? I know you have to switch your channel or wear your headset, so I'm just waiting for you to tell me that everything's okay. Great.
And to thank Ms. Vice President Francia Marquez for gathering us together. Je suis vraiment très honorée.
All right. I think everybody's got their headset. It's a great honor for me to participate in this coming together that lets us see each other. I think it's a rare opportunity to have this collective generation and sharing. I have the impression that there are so many situations. Oh, I'm sorry. Is everybody hearing me okay? Yes, just give us a hands up, I guess, to see if you can hear us okay. All right, great. So, who's not hearing me? In Spanish, are they not hearing? Well, thank you so much. So I'm just going to say again, I'm so happy to see all these women that have inspired me in the past and continue to do so. I'm here because I'm documentary, a producer, and a filmmaker. And through this creative activity, since I was very young in France, these ideas came into my mind as I suffered from this void. As I was seeing all of these faces on a screen where I could never see myself. I never saw people similar to me, and I felt this sense of disability, if you will, when I wanted to correct this. And the only tool I had at my resource was the images of other different people that I was seeing on the screen in front of me. And when I tried or decided to create my own things and my own narrative, my own stories about stories that were not being told, to answer your question, my strategy was tell others about things that were not being heard, that were not being shown, and try to make my or our own problems a priority for others as well. And I like Ousmane Sembel from Senegal so much, a great producer. That was what inspired me to have my first longer film. And when they asked about And there was a Frenchman asking him, but I'm going to paraphrase, but they asked this person that was a filmmaker what message he wanted to portray. And he said, he was asked if Europeans had understood him, if Europeans were understanding his films. And he said, I don't want to be understood by Europeans. The Europeans came to my African continent, they spent centuries there, and they don't even speak our language. We speak their language, or had to learn to do so, so we know all about you, but you don't know much about us. So how do you intend me to be like a sunflower and spin in the direction of the European world? My own individual, I spin around my own world. And my creations reflect just that.
Ce film qui s'appelle La
So if you haven't had a chance to watch this movie from 1966, it's a wonderful movie, and it speaks about the way in which we should involve artistic education. We're all sons, and we can define our creations based on ourselves. And when I create, I'm not concerned about knowing or thinking about what other people might think, or what other people who are not living my experience might understand. I create. I started creating when I was little, and I did not have any strong stories attached to me, but there might be other small girls that can see themselves reflected on what I'm doing. This is just my last remark before I hand the microphone over. So we have a very interesting international image about femininity, and I was born in Paris. I survived in Paris. However, I never saw myself reflected in these images of the girl in Paris. So this documentary allowed me to ask other girls from Paris about their experience, and others that were not identifying themselves with this girl of Paris image, girls from different parts of the world. And I asked them what was their relationship with this city, which is Paris. It is a very well-known city, and it produces an important image. And this is the same case as Parisine. And when you talked about fashion, something that is very interesting to me, because I believe it is very important, and our gathering is proof of that. I think you're all magnificent. We see different styles, hairstyles, scarves, and it truly is incredible. It's wonderful. I would also like to congratulate the Vice President for her style, because many times politicians are asked to make themselves invisible and to wear colorful clothes that are reminiscent of Afro-descendants is very important. Thank you very much. This is all very inspiring. I'm also a journalist, and when I speak publicly, I like to show myself exactly how I am, with colors from different designers and creators. I like to show that African influence through jewelry and all these elements that really speak about who we are and how we are what we are. We are our own reference point, and we inspire one another. It is important to portray ourselves this way. And artistic creation does not lie just in the creation of literature and music. What we are is also the day-to-day creation. Our grandmothers created our hairstyles, our clothes, our gowns, and they created what we have inherited. So what we are portraying also has to do with this, with imposing yourselves and presenting culture. Thank you very much for being who you are.
Buenas tardes. Me llamo Gina. ¿Sí? Más fuerte? ¿Sí? ¿Está bien? Okay, I will speak in English from now on because tengo miedo de hablar en español. Pero it's such a very big pleasure to be here and an honor It has been 15 years since I have been in Cali, and I'm so happy to be back in these transformed circumstances. I know not sufficiently transformed, but I am so very proud to see La Señora Vicepresidenta, because when I was here, we visited Francia Marquez en La Toma, and it was, for me, a profound experience because it connected so many issues that I had studied before in academic life and that I knew from Black history, but to see a community that had lived having resisted slavery from the first day and had lived with pride and culture and in conjunction in the best way with the environment was something that taught me so much when I return. So I'm very pleased to see what it has inspired here. I'm a bit of an outsider on this panel because I'm not the practicing artist. I am a scholar who works with artists, and I've been thinking a lot about the questions we were given about what Black women and girls have contributed to. Do this. That's what's happening. That's what. Es mejor. Okay. What Black women and girls have contributed to the world and to the struggle. And the only reason we have to ask that question is because our contributions are continually erased. Because we have always been a part of every struggle. And I think it's important to think now about the two abolitions. The abolition of racial slavery, which we have almost won, and the abolition, which is important now, of the carceral regimes that extend from slavery, that continue to keep us connected to the imperial and colonized world, and that suppress the work of Black women and the values and culture of Black women. So my work over many years has been to try to challenge the university to think across the various kinds of disciplines that they try to separate. So when you are in a university, you are supposed to study only one kind of subject or know the world in one way. But the problem with that is it is against the form of Blackness that I recognize, in which everything is connected and all our knowledges are connected. So we can imagine, we saw an example here with the beautiful song. We know that culture does such important work. But when we ask someone to speak about the political situation in Colombia or in the United States, we ask the political scientist, or we ask the sociologist, or maybe we ask the historian. But we don't ask the artist to do anything except entertain us. So my life's work has been about trying to learn from artists, to revise the way we understand histories, understand culture, and understand the way we should be in the world of knowledge and research. The project I'm involved with now is about learning from artists about incarceration and all carceral practices, including immigrant detention and all kinds of other things that have been euphemized, or I don't know if that's an easy word, but euphemized as internment, like the detention of Japanese Americans during World War II, and the current environment in the United States in which the words internment are also being used, and incarceration, for those who have been convicted of no crime but are being held not only within the territory of the United States, but being sent to other parts of the world to be tortured and detained. And if I ask those who are producing work in social sciences to tell us about this, they will give us numbers and data. But what we have come to know from years of the production of this research is that a lot of times the research that shows how racist the society is helps to reproduce racism. So culture is the antidote. Culture is where we know, as Señora Vicepresidenta said this morning, how about life. This is where we understand what life is. So then we should require those who are studying in political science, those who are studying in sociology, those who are studying in history, to understand culture on the artist's terms, not by categorizing them by racial group or period or place of origin, but by truly understanding the modalities of culture that allow us to be different, to feel alive. And Black women have helped us to sustain the world by constantly living in two kinds of time. The time of colonization, the time of enslavement, and now the time of incarceration, but also the time of vibrant living, of joy, of song, of making art, of making the world. And we need to make sure that we are allowed to teach that to those who are constantly representing and being called upon to represent who we are and what our history is. Thank you.
Gracias. Bueno,
Well, they're letting me know that we are out of time, but before that, we need to hear from our dear Nidia Gongoro. But before that, I'll be a bad woman again, and I will very briefly answer the question that has to do with the service of arts and how arts and imagination work. And I think that right now we need to imagine freedom, but more than that, we need to imagine fleeing the way that our ancestors practiced it. Fleeing towards the Quilombo, towards the mountains, and towards other spaces. But since we've been told that we have to end this, that was just getting started, I hand it over to Nidia, and you are well aware of our questions.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'll have to be brief. But never again should anybody tell us that we cannot, that we should not dare to do something. I was born and was raised in a community where every day I saw how my mother would hug all the other masters and how the children, the girls at school would hug each other. And I grew up in a community where we felt loved from the time when we were born. And that is the first flag that you use once you come out into the world. Hugs, words, songs, expressions of tenderness. We're full of love, we're not full of hate. And when midwives deliver children, they don't do so with slaps, they do it with music, with chants. And I know that that is not the case only in the Pacific, but in all Afro communities throughout the world. The first thing that you do when you hold a baby in your hands, you start making them dance. You sing to them, you make them dance and move. We come from happy contexts, and despite the fact that we're born in situations where we're not surrounded by material things, we have everything. We have nature, we have water. But the most important thing is that we have love and respect for life. Thank you very much. I come from a community where I recall perfectly well that when I was 10 or 11 years old, I was still swimming in the river in my underwear, and no man in the community would look at me in an improper manner because each adult in my community represented an authority figure for any child, whether they were part of their family or their immediate context or not, because that is what life in the community is about. Everybody cares for each other. That is why today I would like to express, not just to Francia, our sister, I have been feeling a bit down. Somebody asked me this morning, something's wrong. You're always smiling. That is not how you are. But sometimes we really have to get past all this to be able to live with all this pain in this country, because when one of our own is attacked, we feel that we're all attacked. And today, no man from any ethnicity or race should tell me that I have to doubt a black sister that has done absolutely everything and made all the efforts to dignify life and dignify the work and the contribution that we have made in this country as women. When I started traveling around the world, I would go to places where as soon as I got up and I said, I'm from Colombia, people said, really? Oh my God, there's black people in Colombia? And I said, yes. And I play music, and they said, cumbia? And I would say, no, we have cumbia in Colombia, but also marimba, currulao, Pacific. So music needs to continue to be that life vest. Music needs to continue to be that pathway to be able to transform and tell the truth, to heal, to make claims, to save ourselves, to empower ourselves. And it shouldn't just be entertainment. And we should not continue allowing that humanity and our body, our voice, our being continues to be a tool of war, of sexuality, of entertainment, because there is fear. There is fear and terror when it comes to feminine power. There is terror when it comes to women's power and that strength that we hold in our hands to maintain life and to build. There is fear. Do you know why that is? Because now we are no longer afraid. I wanted to sing something, but I won't. Do you know why I won't? So that you'll stay tonight and hear the concert, because if I sing now, you'll leave. Francia, we love you. We love you. We believe you. We hug you, and here we are. You'll get me in trouble, but I would not be Consuelo Concharboleda if I left this event without saying something. We have come together to build together, and Madam Vice President, we need, Madam President of the Forum of Black Communities, Etsy Campbell, we need the creation of an international fund that is autonomous, led by Black women, for promoting arts, culture, and Afro-descendant ancestral knowledge, a fund that belongs to us. We do not want policies for us without us. We want to make them ourselves. This wraps up our panel. I would like to thank all these very powerful women who are here with us for being here, for sharing with us, for sharing with all of you. Please don't leave. We have other panels coming up. We have to go, but there are more things coming. Thank you. I ask you to please give a big round of applause for these powerful voices and the stories of these women who have joined us during this second dialogue space. We will take the official photo of this panel. How many stories that allow us to come together in this international gathering, together for the restoration of our dignity that is being held in the framework of the International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent.
Vamos a continuar entonces con la...
Moving on with the next part of our agenda, we have had spaces of dialogue, conversation, and making these stories cross-cutting, those that we live every day in our daily lives and that we are able to see represented in the words, the stories, and the journey of the women that have been with us in each one of these spaces. It is now time to head into our third dialogue. This dialogue has been called Economic Justice for the Care of Life, a vision of freedom and dignity for Afro-descendants. This is a space that is essential to reflect on how we can build economies that dignify, repair, care, and transform those realities that have historically been shaped by dispossession, exclusion, and inequality. We are joined by women who are promoting economic models rooted in racial justice, autonomy, and liberation. I would like to ask Miranda Migueli, Director of Policy and Programs at Women's Funding Network from United States, to join us up on stage. Also, Dr. Hilary Brown, Director of the Culture and Community Development Program of the Reparations Commission of CARICOM from Guyana. I would also like to ask Natasha George, Delegate of the General Secretariat of the Association of Caribbean States, Trinidad and Tobago, to join us. Danielle Almeida, anti-racist activist who led the first study on Afro-entrepreneurship in Latin America, an initiative that was never seen before in alliance with Veda Preta, CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America, and the CDE plan. She currently leads the management of institutional development at the Museum of Favelas in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We also have Jania Sofia Garzón, Black economist and community weaver, advocate for ethnic and feminist economic models. We will also be joined by Josefina Klinger Zúñiga, social and environmental artisan, director of Mano Cambiada Colombia. We will also be joined by María Elena Quiñones, director of FOM Buenaventura Colombia. This dialogue will be moderated, and I will use the term that Beatriz used, to be a bad woman and provoke a conversation that can lead us to other reflections, will be Glenda Palacios, Afro-Colombian economist and activist, soon to be PhD, from the University of South in California. She is committed to making visible and transforming the structural gaps that impact our communities. With this panel and our moderator ready to provoke this conversation that can lead us to different reflections, I ask you for a big round of applause for our third panel.
Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. I am delighted to be part of this panel and to be able to greet our Vice President Francia Marquez, Angela Davis, from whom we have learned a lot. I would like to start this panel using the words of our Master of Arts, Nidia, who said that we come from happy contexts. We're born surrounded by love, and we have to try to dignify life. But we see that this has become a sort of threat and fear for those who are seeing how we want to be able to keep moving forward. When we talk about economic justice and this work, it is important to understand that these are very important elements for the Black peoples, especially because they refer to structural policies and not assistance policies. I will briefly introduce each one of our wonderful panelists. We have Miranda Migueli, Director of Policy and Programs at Women's Funding Network since 2022. She has a degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and she has a PhD from the School of Law from Georgetown University. We also have Dr. Hillary Brown, who is currently the Director of the Culture and Community Development Program of the Reparations Commission of CARICOM, and amongst other activities, she leads the program of reparations, the genocides of the originary peoples in slavery. She studied at the Universidad de las Indias de Occidente and Michigan University and has a PhD in international communication from Temple University in the US. We also have Danielle Almeida, who has a master's in educational science. She is the Institutional Development Manager at the Museo of the Favelas, and she has led the first study on Afro-entrepreneurship in Latin America, which is an initiative of Feria Preta, the Inter-American Development Bank, and Plan CE. We also have Natasha George. She is a lawyer and has a master's in international relations and an MBA in project management from University in the UK, and she is currently the legal advisor of the Association of Caribbean States. We have Jania Sofia Garzón, my sister, who is a community weaver and has studies in economy, specialization in creative writing, and for 13 years she has been an activist in our movements, and she currently contributes to institutional design of public policies for equality in Colombia. We have Josefina Klinger, who is a social artisan and an environmentalist, and she is the director of Mano Cambiada in Colombia. We also have Maria Elena Quiñones, the director of FON Buenaventura, Colombia. As you know, due to time, we'll have a main question, which is, what are the alternatives that Afro-descendant women have built to be able to achieve economic autonomy in contexts framed by racism, patriarchy, and other forms of intersectional discrimination? We can start over here if you like.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Es un honor estar aquí.
It is an honor to be here. I will speak English.
My gratitude as well to be here and to learn from the distinguished panelists and the participants as well. This has been a very enriching experience. With regard to the question posed, I see women and girls as well, Afro-descendant women, have approached economic strengthening amidst challenges through organization. And when I say organization, I speak about organization in two ways. Organization of self, being organization and preparation through studies, taking advantage of opportunities, being prepared to enrich themselves, grow, and assume roles within our communities, and then organize. Thanks. Organization as part of communities. Organization through NGOs. So, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, my country, NGOs come together to advocate, for example, in terms of policies and laws that impact women. One issue being the minimum wage. NGOs have come together and worked and challenged the government so that there can be an increase in the living wages, recognizing that women form part of the economy but are not recognized, particularly in terms of skills such as caregivers and the carriers of the home. So that in treating with the issues and challenges informally as well as formally, women of Afro descent have used organization and preparation in order to face those challenges. Another mechanism that has been used is assuming roles and not being afraid to assume roles. And we've heard all day commendation and appreciation for Madam Vice President. And it is women and leaders such as herself that have been very important, very great examples. Angela Davis as well, saying thank you. I was very excited when I saw that you would be here. And I must also mention the former Secretary General of the ACS, the Association of Caribbean States, Dr. June Suma, who is also here and was the first Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, which meant a lot because in assuming that role, one of the first things that she did was to ensure that women, the issue of women and women's issues, was mainstreamed into the projects for sustainable development that are the focus for the Association of Caribbean States. But without women in key positions in organizations, regional and international organizations, without women in positions of government and in positions in government, creating policy, establishing governance structures as part of lawmaking. I was in a previous career role, a criminal prosecutor, and I had a police officer say to me, "No woman could ever be my boss." And it was a challenge to me in prosecuting a particular case. But we would have heard it as well throughout the day that these challenges cannot stop us. These challenges must be what guides us, what inspires us, and we must also be part of mentorship. And mentorship is another aspect of organization that is utilized by women in order to face challenges that we encounter as we have our experience. So I tap into and I want to take that direction in terms of answering that question, that organization, preparation, networking, and assuming roles, not being afraid, or even if there is fear, conquering that fear, and teaching, sharing, mentorship. Those have been key elements in that regard. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to be here. I will speak Spanish, and I will answer the question in English. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President, for this opportunity. I am filled with happiness to be here with all the people who are present, youth, and all women who are joining us today.
Introductions. You shared my educational background, and you shared the educational background of our panelists, which are really incredible and exciting. I also come in this role as a feminist, as an Afro-descendant woman, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife. But going back to this idea of education, one of the things that I'm very proud of in the United States context is that Black women are actually the most educated demographic in the country. And that's despite structural racism, that's despite sexism. And I think that's one of the many ways in which, despite everything up against us, we are moving forward, we are excelling. And there is a very deliberate attack in the United States and in other nation states that we're seeing on women having opportunities to access education. So I think that's both an important thing to celebrate and also something to protect. And work across jurisdictions, learn about what's happening in Colombia, in Brazil, in other places in order to strengthen our work nationally, but also remember that we're connected globally.
Good afternoon, everyone. 174 years ago, slavery was abolished in our country. And it was abolished without giving our ancestors any sort of tool so that they could reincorporate themselves into productive life. So what is happening today with our population is something that we have inherited from 174 years ago. We got some lands that were not adequate for production. And despite all the effort of our ancestors, it was very difficult to be able to produce in them. This is something that we see reflected nowadays, all this economic setback that we have. And we have had to fight every day. Our Afro-descendant population, our women, have started to get training and education just like any other population in our country. We have Afro-descendant women in all fields. We have doctors, we have PhDs, masters. We have women present in all fields of economy, science, and health. And they have had opportunities, and we know how difficult it has been for many of them in their workspaces, because despite their training and education, we're always looked at in a certain way. We're looked at in a discriminatory manner with certain structural and institutional racism that exists in our country. And in fact, that is part of what we have seen with our Vice President, Francia Marquez, who is a really strong woman. She is a woman that has really fought, not just for her territory, but for all of us in Colombia. And despite all this, she is now being pointed out because she is an Afro woman and because she comes from the people, and she's not like those who have traditionally been in charge of our country. And I invite all women, if we do not come together and protect ourselves, who will protect us? But going back to the economic context, there have been many difficulties, and we have had to be creative to be able to identify sources of income, sources for resources. We have to create our own entrepreneurships. And we have had to use all of our culture, all of our ancestral elements, and many of the products and the economic and productive activities that you see in Afro women are very much tied to our heritage, our culture. Right outside, there is a beautiful array of entrepreneurships of Afro-descendant women. And as you can see, they are cultural manifestations: earrings, gowns, turbans, makeup, accessories. It all has to do with our culture. I was the Culture and Tourism Secretary in Cali from 2012 to 2015. And during the Petronio Alvarez Festival, where we had two important elements, music and food, we included Afro aesthetics, not just because it is aesthetics, because they saw this as something very superficial, something that did not have anything to do with culture. But it turns out that that is not the case. And what we did was exercise resistance, telling people in Cali and throughout the country that we're here with what we are. And we're not just music, we're not just food. We're also the way we dress, the way we walk, the makeup we use. Our body is different than other bodies of other women in this country because they're different. We have a larger bum, we have larger breasts, and this makes our clothes be designed differently. And as our colleague said before, our colors are different. The clothes we wear are different. And that is where, in the Petronio Alvarez Festival, we presented the Afro aesthetics, where, additional to showing how we dance and the history of our music, we also portrayed the aesthetics that have become a business for many. Very important cultural creations as well. And as you can see, most of our women are dressed using this aesthetic line. They're wearing this sort of makeup, and this has become a source of income that is significant for women. here I have a product from a couple of girls that I came across when I was getting here, and they're promoting soaps that are made with herbs and plants from our territories. These are just samples that they asked me to hand out to my fellow panelists because they are promoting their productive activity. They're promoting the source of income that they have. And this is made using our culture. So for us, culture and economy are things that go hand in hand. They're not independent. And I invite all of us who are here to support one another. For the first time in Colombia, there is a fund for productive and free women. And that fund is led by the Vice President. That fund, even though it came to be in 2020, the Vice President brought it to life and focalized it in our population. Sometimes we complain and we say that we have no resources. And in fact, there is no credit fund at banks that have favorable conditions for us. And we do not want any subsidies, but we do want to have better conditions to be able to lower the gap in opportunities. That fund is allowing this. Let's please use these funds. Let's go into the website and find out what the fund is about. And let's use that fund, which is there for us to use it. Vice President, thank you so much for this fund. And before I finalize, because they're telling me that we have to wrap up, I would like for us to tell Francia that she has our support, that we're here, and we will continue to be here, and she represents us. She is our face, and she has to continue to be so. Thank you very much. My Pacific and feminist energy greets you and embraces you. I would like to tell you that nothing is a coincidence. Life uses us as a tool, and that is the agreement that we made when we came into the world, and our spirit decides where to be born, circumstances and territories. So my soul has a very good taste because my spirit decided to be born in this black woman body in the Pacific, in Chocó, in Colombia, and I cannot go about this except from this deep point of view, and I will talk about harvesting. We are at the point of harvesting as individuals and as humanity, and what we have today as a country and a society is what is ours by the law of consciousness. And these are decisions that we have made with consciousness or not. Many times in fear, or many times wanting to imitate that we're getting kicked out of. And we have in our hands the magic and the capacity to make them our own. We can change that logic. I won't go chasing after them. In this story that I am grateful for, when I talk about harvesting, the Vice President, who I'm telling to go to Nuki, the women from the collective wanted to tell her that we're waiting for her to hug her, because in that corner of the world, we're waiting to be able to tell her that we're willing to hug her and listen to her. Who told you that it was going to be easy? It wasn't easy. Who told you that you were going to achieve all this in these 4 years? That is not the case. But I am the result. I have been harvesting part of what those who came before me planted, and my responsibility is that this harvest can be inherited by others. And it is planted by those who have to take care of the feeling and the intent that they're planting with, because they won't always be responsible for that territory. A seed will fall in fertile land, or also it might fall into land that is not fertile. But those who plant cannot lose sight of the value, the courage, and the bravery to stand up in the midst of the circumstances to plant. And the Vice President was very brave at 40 years of age to stand up and do what she had to do. So she does not have permission to be tired because she not only has a year left. And now I will talk about economic justice. But I had to tell you all this story, and I apologize. Since I am a mayora, I can do whatever I want. I will talk to you about the model of economy with empathy. This model is one of justice. I come from a territory of light, a territory of feminine and masculine energy, where more than 9,000 Black indigenous people live, and we have 956 square kilometers of ecosystems, 45 kilometers of beach that dance to the ocean. And the ocean has been a master as the jungle and rivers. And in that information of biocultural territories, we faced some challenges. But when we stand up to create our own economic model, because we had significant challenges and disadvantages, but also an opportunity, we started to try to find a way. And out of all those reflections that I make in the middle of the jungle, that has been my academia, the jungle and people. We're diverse, we're the same, but diverse. Some are in the academia, some are in politics, others are housewives, but each one does something and they have to think that their work has to be done so well so that it can contribute to change the situation of all others. That is where I started to realize that the Minga, what you are creating here today is a Minga. We're gathered here today from all parts of the country to celebrate this. That is the excuse. We had to come together so that each one of us could reinforce that idea. We had the Minga. Remember that the roads and all the roads were organized around the airport of Nuki. We had an exchange of tangible products, and we had mano cambiada, which was the exchange of these activities and these skills. So I would help my colleagues, and then they would help me when it was my turn. That was economy with empathy. Money came in, and it broke down the model. And we have a tragedy, because now we have money at the core, and we have not revolutionized the world by putting money as another mediator. We have to recover the economy of care, because I was not going to be a midwife to the woman who was going around with my husband. I would be the midwife of somebody I liked, because to be able to have synergy, we have to like each other, and that is economy with empathy. Today, I will be your midwife. You can pay me, but then I'll do the same for you. That is different, and that is what we have to recover. Money is a mediator. And I ask you, look at the strength of the words. Economy. We became selfish. We have found the way of going over others with money, stepping on others. We have seen how the ill practice of being able to go through a political strategy and how it's making us be in a negative situation.
So what happens if we don't just call this economy in the same way and think of it in the same way, but instead we think in a collective economy that is for all of us. So I'll tell you what we did with this idea. Because the economy of tourism has always had a big challenge. You know, on the Pacific coast of Colombia, our economy has been mostly extractivistic, whether it's logging or extracting wood from the forest, or fishing activities, fishing in the different water bodies, but no tourism. And we understood that the only role we have left was to serve others, people's tables, or dance our cultural dances, you know. Otherwise, I decided to present us with a new model, a Pacific approach model, because I'm so tired of fighting for this. It's no longer through confrontation. We need to think about the magic of our wisdom and everything that we can provide for others. So we tried to assume this role as host of anybody that came to the Pacific coast, and we tried to create a politically correct model I might add, to bring together this vision of a Pacific and sustainable model. And we found in tourism a feasible strategy that has economy, the Minga economy or collective economy. Because for you to talk about Minga or working as a collective or between several collectives, you need to renounce to the idea of only thinking about the individual economic activity. I don't even want to call it associativeness. I want to talk about an economic ecosystem that we need to think about. And the other line of work has to do with the environment. If the great nature that we have in biocultural territories in regions, if we don't put it at the center as the keys of the golden eggs, we will finish off any capacity for tourism in our region, because the tourism that goes to Nuki, and we started with 500 tourists per year, now we have over 20,000. And that means we've achieved something good there, right? But today the tourists that are visiting this location, that tourist is trying not to affect the ecosystem he's visiting. But they also need to be socially responsible, because the natural areas that they're visiting, human geography is also as fragile as the other ecosystems. So we try to build awareness about this. We would like this topic to be better understood, but I think we're building awareness. And the culture, the blackness of my culture is something that is added value in this case, because it's something I need, or I know how to do with my hands and with my cosmovision. That's someone from another place can come and try to replicate, but will not be able to do it so. He will not be able to sell my region as well as I can. So this has to do with the fact that nature, or I should say tourism and poverty, I think should not be able to coexist in the same place. And tourists are changing the way they travel. They don't want massive locations. They don't want just sexual tourism. They want a smaller, better type of tourism, and we need to provide the best advice for people that go to regions such as Nuki, for example, so that with good locations that are being promoted, we can, pull the other ones that can come and follow. We would like to go faster, but the marketing strategies and the narratives behind this are very important. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, because we have a saying, an ignorant person that never speaks will kill his own mother, we say. We are so good at hating others just because someone speaks ill of them or bad of them. And we need to watch our narrative to change the perception in ourselves and in our community, to be able to seduce and present something attractive to the customers that are coming as tourists. And I will also talk about a generational gap. And when we have the Festival of Migrations, for example, by the way, you're all invited, finishing August, to have an environmental cultural feast, old and young alike, so that the paradigm of poverty, so that imaginary of declaring war against nature because you need to kill off nature for progress, is killed off. I mean, the narrative is killed off. We need to provide the necessary dignity to prevail, and we need to install a different model that everybody's in agreement with. But what I wanted to say to close off is that one day I had to start researching and going more into this spiritual topics to understand about tourism and how to combine this. And I realized that the outside world is much more scared than we are. And if you ask me, what is the psychosocial state of our country? Usually the country that has more power, and there's, when I say power, there's entrepreneurs, but you have power if you're one that runs the household. There's a vice president has a different type of power, but Colombia is a country of broken children, socioeconomically speaking, and we are a relatively young country in the exercise of the different types of power. We only know one way to organize our country previously, and we are all broken children, if you will, in our teenage years, trying to experience how to wield power. And if we are going to have the best evolution in the way to understand the wielding of different powers of humanity, I think we're following down the wrong path. We need to think about the center or basic element of our soul and what we're made of. And when other people told us we were soulless, I think maybe we bought into that story because we are human spirits, and we as black people committed with the spiritual world a long time ago to teach humanity and walk through our own humanity so that everybody or mankind understood that its world is more transcendental than the basic things that one might appreciate. And I invite you to consider this. Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I feel so contemplative that I could just yield my chance to speak and be happy. But I would say that the commitment I have to life, first of all, and appreciating the people here, I would salute the ancestors and the knowledge that we have contained in this room. And I would ask for the blessing of Shu, the great dynamizer of the world, and salute the spiritualities and different beliefs of everyone here. And my spiritual mother that helped me be reborn. And I thank the opportunity today for your attention here today, and especially thank this sensation and feeling that I have of being the most successful person in the world. This is what I feel right now. I feel the most successful person in the world. Because I believe success is when you achieve sitting next to the peers you admire, and this is happening for me today. Thank you so much. And I come from Brazil, not as an individual, but because I'm summoned by 2,885 people that answered a survey from the first study about the Afro entrepreneur profile in Latin America. And on behalf of these people, I come with other Afro ancestors and wise people that allow me to speak on their behalf. And I am the coordinator of this Afro Entrepreneur Profile initiative led by Freida Preta, which is a Brazilian org that I have the privilege of greeting Adriana Barbosa, that came up with this project that today is the largest Afro culture festival in Latin America. Thank you. That deserves a big round of applause. It was a large effort from a black woman that has resisted 22 years working to put together this entrepreneurship that has transformed not just economy in Brazil, but also provided the possibility of self-declaring and have Afro identities, self-sustenance system. Today, children can be born and say, I'm a black boy, I am a black girl. 22 years ago, 30 years ago, that just wasn't possible. And this huge impact is thanks to the work of Adriana Barbosa, of course, with the Freida Preta team behind her for 22 years. Having said that, I would like to use this space and then as objectively as I can to talk about very interesting points presented here. The colleague was talking about we are entrepreneurs in different activities, and the creative industry is perhaps the activity that has the greatest number of companies or entrepreneurships in Latin America, followed by consultancy, technology, transportation services, education, health, and others that follow. And how do we know the order of these, or which one is more appealing or important? And the answer is we have data intelligence now that has been constructed. It's there, and we need to produce data, like the Peruvians say, data kills, kills gossip. And we know that it's better to have data, and we assume that most of the entrepreneurs and people that were entrepreneuring in Latin America were women, and that is the case. It is black women, actually, and we have that figure now, where 50% of entrepreneurs in Latin America self-declares themselves as women or Afro women. We also have the possibility with this study and survey, and I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish very well. I sometimes use not the best word, but I hope you're understanding me. And I thank you for your kindness and bearing with me. But this study took place in 5 countries simultaneously. That's Panama, Peru, Argentina, Brazil, and majestically in Colombia. And the study was only possible because in 2019, Freiraprieta.org made the first study of entrepreneurial profile in Brazil for black businesses, trying to communicate and use the indicators that the public sector doesn't, the companies use. We're in the process of affirmative action policy construction to have easier access to credits with direct cooperation of our president, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. It's a process that we are managing thanks to data management. In 2024, a new iteration of this process was ran again, so another cycle was worked on with Pan American Development Bank and with Frida Prieto organization to have a survey that revealed not only Brazilian data, but then for the other countries as well. And I want to share with you today what we have understood and gotten to know from these results. Women, it's mostly women, over 50% that are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs between 20 and 29 is the most common age group. And 89% of these entrepreneurs that call themselves as anti-racist. 59% also uses ancestral elements or cultural elements to promote their own business. And I say once again, it's not just for the creative industries, but for data intelligence and the technology sector and transportation, health, and other economic activities that are included in this survey. We have also understood that the scholarity level for entrepreneurs is a pretty high level. Women have a good level of education, have university degrees or postgraduate degrees in most cases, but they're just entrepreneuring as an alternative when facing unemployment. The other results that we're trying to put together now is strengthen this data intelligence, and we're going to have in Brazil, in a place called Salvador de Bahia, the Feira Preta as an activity as well, and we're going to have the possibility of trying to understand our economic system with the banks, with the financing companies, with the public and private sector coming together so that we can have a whole ecosystem that confronts and fights off the racist system. Like Freire says, the system is racist, and the construction of economic alternatives also needs the systemic deconstruction of racism. I don't want to take any longer. I want to have enough time for the other colleagues to speak. But I would just leave you with, from the bottom of my heart, thank the Vice President, Francia Marquez, and I'm here speaking from the outlook, from the point of spirituality and how to understand our existence. From a spiritual standpoint, I would like that the Orishas can accompany you and harbor you, because this is also an alternative for us to have a better existence, a better living. This is why we're here today. Thank you. And Oyayansa is the godmother of entrepreneurial women in Brazil, fighting for emancipation and freedom, using economic activity and entrepreneurship from the Brazilian experience brings us an opportunity for economic emancipation through selling food products dedicated to the Orishas, people and clothing and apparel that have been used in these communities in the region of Terreiro de Candomblé. Thanks to the identity that is impregnated in all these products and in all the products offered. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope we have many open paths from these discussions. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everybody.
That's the beginning and the end of my Spanish. It is indeed also a tremendous honor to be part of these very important conversations that we have been having today. Vice President Marquez, I first have to give you very warm fraternal greetings from Secretary General, Her Excellency Carla Barnett. She was really sorry that she could not make it, but she wanted you to be assured of CARICOM's solidarity with you, support, commitment to collaboration with you. And so she wanted to ensure that CARICOM was here today. And indeed, I have to congratulate you and thank you for your leadership that led to the recognition of this important International Day for African women and girls of African descent. And I see it really as a continuation of a tradition of resistance, an important resisting tradition that our ancestors started under slavery. They refused to accept the position of the colonizers, denying their humanity, denying their fundamental human rights, their freedom, and they never stopped fighting until they brought that system down. And we can be said to have an ancestral mandate, and that mandate is to continue the resistance. And it is the same tradition of resistance that the CARICOM Reparations Commission has been pursuing for the last 12 years. And in spite of the fact that so many said, you're wasting your time, this is not going to happen. Europe is not going to listen. This is not going to happen in your lifetime. But by staying the course, by following that ancestral mandate, by keeping up the resistance, we are seeing the progress. And so it is very important that we continue. We support you, Vice President Marquez, and all of the other leaders who are here today who have inspired us with their presentations. We draw on your strength. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that the legacy of that history is what we are confronting today. And that is what we are resisting against. The continued treatment of women and girls, people of African descent, as second class, as at the bottom of the social ladder. And we are expected to accept that position without fighting back. Well, I'm originally from Jamaica, so you know I come from the land of resistance. And what Bob Marley told us, you are got tired to see me face, but you can't get me out of the race. So we're going to be here, and we're going to continue that struggle. So when we look at the situation of women and girls, the economic disadvantaged situation that they are in is directly related to the history of oppression that we have suffered. And so when we find that the levels of unemployment among women, and especially among young women, are much higher than the rest of the population, when we find that women receive 20% less pay than men, no equal pay for equal work, when we find that there are certain professions that are still dominated by men and that women have a hard time breaking into, when we find that our young girls are being trafficked because they're just looking for employment, looking for an opportunity, why is it women and girls of African descent have to continue to face this dire situation of disadvantage? So this is what the resistance is about. This is what an international day of this nature is intended to bring global attention to these injustices that cannot continue. It is also the resistance that has given us the second international decade for people of African descent. And we fought for that. We lobbied civil society, government, all of our Dr. Suma and Epsi Campbell-Barr in the Permanent Forum, and those in the working group of experts. We all fought collectively for it, and we now have a second decade, and we need to ensure that we realize real benefits out of that second decade for our people. And this International Day is all part of that very important process. This year we are observing the 30th anniversary of Beijing. So there are so many convergences and opportunities to continue to bring attention to the plight of women and girls and to ensure that we take a step forward. I have two lovely daughters, 19 and age 23. And what they always say to me is, Mom, why is it every conversation we have ends up talking about enslavement? And I said to them, because I need to prepare you. I need to prepare you, and I need them to understand that they are beautiful, they are strong, ensure that they are empowered, and that they are ready for the struggle. And so this is what I would like to leave with you, that this is what we need to do for our young women. I was very touched to listen to some of the young women on the first panel and how they spoke so eloquently and so confidently and, you know, really in their own African essence. And that's really what we need to do for our young people, not only to empower them with the knowledge of their history, but to ensure that they embrace their culture, their Africanness. Let them understand the power of this wonderful continent which has birthed all of us. And so it is with those few words, recognizing that we have a time constraint, that I would say, let us continue the struggle. It is indeed a pleasure to share that stage and that commitment to change with all of you. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bueno, gracias por la paciencia, por la escucha.
Well, thank you all for your attention, for your attentive listening. I'm so glad to see all these loving faces that I'm sure have treaded for a long way in this path. And I'm glad to see how we have changed over the years. And I'm always nervous to speak before a crowd like this, with all the rigor that my peers demand, but also because of all the intimate connection I feel with so many people in this auditorium that I think requires greater responsibility with everything we say here. And I do want to keep my intervention short. I want to say 4 things. Firstly, thank all our elders and wise women that are with us today. I would ask young and old alike for your permission to speak before you. Then recognize all these great women. And I come from a lineage of activists. I've worked in mixed organizations that are always said to be crazy women that are trying to organize, to be louder and more conflictive, that got nothing done. And I understood that as long as people were saying this blabbing, these women were doing things. And then I understood why they're crazy, because they are the ones that are doing something, really, and when they're not recognized for what they're doing, then they can actually become a little crazy. So I'm so proud to meet our Villaneira, the founders and great women, our senior women that have guided us. And it's so important to recognize the people that are not here, imprisoned, or living without a roof over their heads, and to recognize our peers such as Rosy Martinez that is here, is Pilar Madrid being here, that we're never afraid to speak on behalf of women, for black women, and that it took me so long to reach that place that you perhaps treaded on through a long time ago and understand what you were talking about back then. It took me a while. But before we talk about specific matters, the general message I've tried to express on several places about the feeling of cancellation that and against Francia Marquez. That's an environmental leader. Francia Marquez, that is a social leader. Francia Elena Marquez Mina is a political global leader with a coherent, global, and consistent project throughout. And whoever cannot understand that, whoever cannot just see that, should revisit their own principles. So, to speak of economic justice, we need to speak about reparation. And in reparation, I want to talk about one specific picture. Forum of women being murdered and global forum, all of those you that participated, or many of you are here. And I remember when we're finishing, when I asked Elder Vicenta Moreno, I asked our elder, and in the end, what is reparation? So I always have my little notebook to take notes about these answers. I was ready because I thought she was going to give me a little, class session. And she said, reparation is a change of economic model. And that's all she said. Changing the economic model. That's all she said. So when we are thinking and we are invited to think about economic justice, when we explore what this means materially speaking in the lives of people in a practical sense, how can we identify this and measure this? We need to talk about economic practices. We have thought about economic practices that exploit the feudal model, the hacienda model, the current economic system we suffer, and the transition economic policies that are generating accumulation of riches to then allegedly have a redistribution that only generates more gaps until now. I'm thinking about what is the criteria that we can use and to identify when there is a practice that is exploiting others, when it's a transition one, and when it's a liberation one, or a true independence one. When we engage in either direction, are we creating a better community or stepping farther away from that concept of an ideal community? If the economic practice invites us to come together, it can be a transition practice, but if the economic practice that we are exercising summons different people, different generations, breaks the pattern of generational debt that we have engaged in, we are talking about a liberating economic practice. That can be tourism, that can be in the arts or cultural expressions. And in the last economic justice event that we had in March, Elder Nidia Góngora said, I have my brand now as a music label, and I don't have a single dime left, but I'm so happy. And I just had watery eyes because it's about just believing that you can achieve these great things and dreaming without mental chains. But there needs to be accompanied by a political project that brings back topics in the agenda that we have forgotten, like the countries that were not aligned in this after the Second World War, that said that we couldn't stop talking about the external debt and the money you owe other countries. I said we couldn't stop talking about fiscal policy that told us that black women and African descent countries or people from African descent couldn't be in that scenario where we had multilateral cooperation agreements. We had no presence there. It's always other people deciding for us things that will affect us, but without us participating. So necessarily, like colleagues from the panel this morning were saying, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to train because the fights that we will have in 50 years, and like we can see in Haiti, in Sudan, in Congo, and in Palestine, will no longer go through international bodies anymore. There will come a point where the Yolomboy community or Jurumangi or the Lorica municipality community will have to come before an arbitration tribunal to prevent that this Gongora or Monsanto or some multinational company denies us the basic right to be in our territory, perhaps. And I ask you, who of us is prepared to do an advocacy process to prevent this? And maybe we can say we're a little prepared, or maybe we aren't. And we need to think about the future we're imagining. I think economic justice makes us first think, or should make us think about the future we're imagining for ourselves, and thinking of all the leaders, men and women alike. Let's say that we continue with this nationalization policy that's going on regarding people from let's say the sugar mills, and what's happening with different economic activities. What would be the jobs or activities that we would need to engage in if they tell us that the sugar mills are the property of the people that have inhabited them and worked them for so many years? People answer, if this happens, most people would ask for a job. Our imagination, our imaginarium, is only about getting a job, paying for school for our kids, and being able to live, week after week or month after month. But we have no dreams beyond that in many occasions. This is the path that the Vice President's office is trying to open for us. And I feel it's the same path. I want to describe what so many of you have said, even trying to lead companies and work with companies that we've never agreed with what they're doing. How are we preparing ourselves to work with them, bring them back to something that is useful, so it's not an exploitation economy, so that we can have an economy that ensures that we have a joyful and a peaceful and a territory full of hope? How are we providing the continent behind the words, besides attacking and just thinking of this possibility of integrating some of these through the proper mechanism? I mean, talking about philanthropy, the Black Women's Fund has achieved, I'm going to say, captured international cooperation to dedicate specifically to financing these women's initiatives and the people that have had gender discrimination and that are of African descent. And I would like that just one day in the next forum of 25th of July, absolutely all operators and the staff and the interpretation team, all of them should be Black women. All of them. Just for one day, so that we don't say that we're generating segregation ourselves and then doing the same things. But that's something I wanted to share with you. So I would like to thank you now for each and every one of your powerful voices. Thank you for your interventions. I would talk about 7 basic points. I see a lot of convergence here in the ideas and proposals presented that come out from as a response of the questions. And one of the daughters of our panel members was asking, you said, why all our conversations end up talking about slavery? And what we observe is that disadvantageous economic conditions, you said, are the result of oppression. We observe labor grabs for access to job positions. Then the salaries are not equal as well. And then we see how systematic and embedded the racism truly is. And then how systematic and organized our actions should be analyzing these results. And when we think about slavery, it always forces us to think about how these masters or colonizers or oppressors or rapists were compensated on the one hand, and how the black communities and peoples were left without resources. So an important calling is to be creative in presenting and understanding this. Someone mentioned an economy through empathy that is not always in the same line of confrontation, but also using your magic, one of you said. And I would add with our spirituality and with the presence of our forefathers and our spiritual parents accompanying us, next to us, forcing us to think about economic justice. We're talking about reparation and deep and hardest questions about how these practices make us better community beings, and in the direction of a liberating, broader emancipation project. But I see the convergences and continuation of resistance you mentioned, because it's an ancestral legacy that was given, or that was telling us that we should not give up and renounce what our spiritual parents have given all of us. Thank you very much.
Que se sienta, por favor, ese fuerte aplauso.
Let's give a big, strong round of applause for these powerful women who have led us to reflect about economic justice and the processes that we have been experiencing as ethnic communities to be able to continue in our struggle. I would now like to invite our moderator and panelists for the official photo. We have our photographer ready to capture this panel that has been carried out within the framework of our gathering together for the restoration of our dignity.
Por supuesto, en este grito de reconocimiento, en este espacio donde todos, todas y todos.
This space where we all come together from these different places that each one of us represents, we will now continue with this dialogue that brings us together today. I would like to give you a special recommendation. Amongst the efforts that the Vice Presidency carries out with Dr. Francelena Marquez Mina, they have always tried to bring together the diaspora, regardless of language barriers. And that is why in each one of the spaces that we have today, we have the possibility of having simultaneous interpretation, so that language is not a barrier that prevents us from being able to recognize ourselves in the stories of others. Let's please be careful with the interpretation devices. We would like to thank the team that is currently supporting us with this service. Please, at the end of this event, do not forget to return the devices outside of the auditorium. We now have our next panel, but first we have a social service that I have been requested, which is the following. During lunch, one of our sisters left her cell phone. She left it at lunch. Those of us who come together, when we come together, nothing gets lost. Somebody always returns whatever they find. So in this calling filled with sorority, I would ask whoever found the phone that has the ID card in the phone case of Mrs. Olga Lucia Pechene can please contact somebody from the logistics team so that we can return this phone to her. During lunch, she forgot it at one of the tables. We will now continue with this panel, this dialogue that is called Together for the Restoration of Her Dignity. We will listen to women who lead, transform, and dream of a more just and peaceful world rooted in resistance and dignity. A conversation amongst Afro-descendant and African leaders who have framed history and who today share their visions, commitments, and life journeys with us. We are honored to welcome Dr. Lehman Bowie, 2011 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, a peace activist and defender of women's rights in Liberia and across the world. I would also like to invite Efa Saiba Masudi, Minister of State and Minister of the Environment of the Democratic Republic of Congo, tireless advocate for climate justice, African sovereignty, and women's rights. I would also like to ask Dr. Francia Elena Marquez Mina, Vice President of the Republic of Colombia, social and environmental leader, a continental icon in the struggle for the dignity of Afro-descendant peoples in Latin America. This dialogue will be moderated for all of us by Angelica Sanchez Barona, PhD candidate in the Department of African and African American Studies at Harvard University. This is a space to collectively imagine a world that is more just, more dignified, and more alive for all Afro-descendant women and girls. Let's welcome this panel with a strong round of applause.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us to this late in the day, for your patience. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this thought-provoking and powerful event. So far, we have heard a lot of words, phrases, proposals, all memorable, that will most likely lead us to reflection beyond today. During lunch, we shared a few thoughts. So this gathering still has a long way to go. I would also like to thank Madam Vice President Francia Marquez and her team for organizing this event today. It is not easy to organize something so large. It is not easy, but we're here sharing together, and that is what we expected. Today I have Dr. Lima Roberta Boy, Nobel Peace Prize winner in 2011 from Liberia, Dr. Eve Basaiba Masudi, Minister of State and Minister of the Environment of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Vice President of the Republic of Colombia, Francia Marquez Mina. I will quickly introduce Dr. Eve Basaiba Masudi, who is the Minister of State, Minister of the Environment and Sustainable Development of the Democratic Republic of Congo since March 2023 to this date. She was elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2018, and in 2023, the territory of Basoka, province of Shoko. Eve Basaiba was president of the Sociocultural Commission of the National Assembly from 2012 to 2018, honorary senator elected in Kinshasa from 2007 to 2012, and president of the Sociocultural Commission of the Senate from 2007 to 2012. Welcome. Dr. Lima Roberta Bowie, recognized leader, global thinking, facilitator of peace processes. She's a social worker and a defender of the rights of women. She has been a strong leader in the movement Acción Masiva de Libertad por la Paz that brought together Christian and Muslim women in a nonviolent campaign that played a decisive role in ending the war in Liberia in 2003. Due to her powerful leadership in this process and her tireless work in pro of peace, Dr. Lima was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011. She is the founder and president of Bowie Peace Foundation Africa and executive director in the Institute of Gender, Rights and Transformative Peace, the School of Law at the University in New York. She was also the founding leader of the Initiative for Reconciliation in Liberia and co-founder and former executive director of the African Network of Women, Peace and Safety. She is currently a member of the Advisory Board on Mediation of the General Secretariat of the UN, jury of the Hilton Humanitarian Prize of the Conrad Hilton Foundation, and member of the Directive Council of the Carnegie Corporation in New York. Welcome. And our Vice President, Francia Marquez Mina. Francia Elena Marquez Mina is a daughter of the people, mother of two, grandmother and caregiver of La Casa Grande. She was born in Suarez, Cauca, in the middle of a mountain with two neighboring rivers where her relatives have their roots deep within. Her roots are the steps of hundreds and thousands of enslaved human beings that gave their lives and work to be able to give room to freedom for this country. Since she was young, she made this her mandate, her way of thinking, and her way of feeling. From her ancestors, she learned that dignity does not have a price, and that resisting is not standing to everything. She is a lawyer of the University Santiago de Cali with a common purpose, weaving with others to put knowledge at service of others. As a result of her collective leadership, She got the National Prize of Human Rights in 2015 and the Environmental Goldman Prize in 2018. Thanks to her peoples, she was the candidate to the Representatives Chamber. And then in 2020, she was the president of the National Peace Council of Reconciliation and Coexistence. And motivated by the need of dignifying her people and raising her voice for those in poverty that have historically suffered exclusion, Francia Marquez was the pre-candidate for the presidential elections in 2022. And after obtaining the second highest number of votes, she was assigned as vice presidential formula for Gustavo Petro for the Pacto Histórico. June 19th was when they achieved their victory.
La oficina de la vicepresidenta de la
The Vice President's office had a fundamental role in adopting the resolution of the National Assembly of the UN that officially declared July 25th as the International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent. And today we are commemorating the first year and the first anniversary of this resolution. Welcome.
Bueno, hemos escuchado.
We have heard a lot of things during this very productive day filled with conversations. But we're also experiencing a very complex global context where it would seem that the speed of communication, youth is more critical and demanding, they're more aware, but we also see how right-wing movements are revitalizing at a global level. Affirmative action programs and programs of diversity, equality, and inclusion are starting to be dismantled in some countries. Little by little, there are new forms of punishment on the control that women have on our bodies. There are even left-wing and progressive movements that find justifications in condemning the work of black women that dare to be part of these governments that are also progressive.
Frases poderosas. Alguien dijo.
This morning we heard powerful sentences. Somebody said, when a black woman rises or stands up, the world shakes. But the Vice President also told us during her speech, when there is no obedience, there is punishment and there is violence. Therefore, the price for speaking up is high. However, we have the three of you with roles that are very important within your governments at a global level, facing the context of violence and attacks of the extreme right-wing and also progressive groups. And in this context, considering this very complex scenario in which you play very important roles right now, from your experiences, why do you believe it is fundamental? Why is it important to promote this dialogue in pro of the consolidation of a global agenda, in pro of women and girls of African descent?
Doctora Eve, ¿quiere empezar?
Dr. Eve, would you like to start?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. First of all, I would like to formally homage Her Excellency Francia Marquez and thank her for her invitation and for our participation here. I'm very happy for having chosen, that you have chosen this place, Universidad Libre. We will not only talk about liberty and freedom, but we will also talk about young people. And we will talk about the future for these youth. Because as women, we have experienced difficult situations. Our grandmothers experienced these type of situations, and that is why we are preparing the future for our children and grandchildren. We want our children and grandchildren to really enjoy freedom. First of all, allow me to ask you to please stick to some principles when we finish this gathering. The first one has to do with our race. The black race did not used to exist because God was missing the products necessary to create the white race. No, the black race exists because it must exist. Because it was the will of the gods and the Creator, because we're beautiful, we're better. And the race that we are talking about is not a white race. We're proud of what they are. Another principle anyone who does not like their own community cannot evolve. We have to accept ourselves before we continue talking, and we have to love each other just as we are. That is the most important thing, to continue reinforcing this mentality and to have ambitions to be able to save all our people. Another principle that we have to retain is, so that our race can continue moving forward, we must know the history of our past. But it's also true that we have to know it even more in positive terms. Black people have great history in humanity. This also pertains me. Due to the Afro-descendancy, and if we were taken from Africa to a different place, they didn't just take anyone. They came to look for us because we're strong, we're dynamic, and we're able. It is true that we were considered to be machines because there weren't machines, and we had to work in place of machines. We're capable to do all these positive things. And this is something very important. We know that the condition of women is difficult, the condition of black women, because women throughout the world, regardless of their race, experience situations of discrimination. So in terms of black women, we have the matter of race. For those that did not understand that we are the better race, and to come here to this country, such as Colombia and South America, on top of the situation that women are involved in, we have the matter of black women and women that used to be enslaved. So we have all these three negative situations that carry weight. So I would like to say that these difficult situations are the ones that have exclusion. Challenges are what lead us to discover the capacities that we have. The capacity of men is discovered when they're facing obstacles, and we have been able to discover that pearl, which is called Francia Marquez, because she was taken to face these obstacles. She was pushed towards the obstacles. And regardless of where we are, we all have to discover our talent. We have to capitalize on what we are. I was born in the people. I was not born at a hospital. I was born on some leaves, some plantain leaves, in very difficult positions. But If we have a list of the people in our country, I'm in the top 2. If we consider the personalities of Africa in the world, I'm part of those personalities and that list of personalities because I was able to capitalize on my situation to fight and to raise our heads and to be able to be a precursor for others. So I would like to end this remark saying that Black women have the possibility of having great ideas to face all the challenges that we had before. Some of the most wise people in the world are Black women. Some experts of the world are women, especially Black women. So we need to create those ties, and we have to really value women. Let's highlight them, and let's reinforce the capacity of our children in education, studies, and the reinforcement of their capacities. We will have a lot of Francias Marquez, and we will also have many of those who will be standing on the stage, and this will be something wonderful for our race and for the entire humanity. Thank you very much.
Vicepresidenta. Ah, no, Lima.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, for taking me out of my country at a time when I don't travel. This woman is audacious. She sent 3 letters of invitation. I was getting invitations from everywhere. And then I got a call from our former president, Sirleaf, and she said, Lima, you know the Vice President of Colombia, I just met her in Italy, and she wants you to come to Colombia. I said, but Madam President, I don't travel in July. I stay home and do my work. And she said, but you have to go and help this girl. She's a young girl. She's doing great. And if you know anything about the history of Liberia, our former president was the first woman to be elected president in Africa. So when she said, go to Franca, I had to come. So thank you for your consistency from the trenches of advocacy to your consistency in the political life of this country, Colombia. You will be remembered in the history of your nation. We have been hearing a lot of things about defunding DEI, rising authoritarianism, and all of the English word that people use about the current times that we find ourselves in. When people ask me as an African, how do you feel about what is happening? My response is simple: this is my reality. And every Black African woman and every woman of Afro descent, our reality is suppression, oppression, slavery, defunding, lack of recognition. So when people keep asking so from the time of our ancestors, this is how we've lived. So how do we navigate this? The way I see it is that we have an agenda that has been passed down to us from the older generation. And that agenda is to leave our continent, the spaces that we live in, better than what we met it or how we met it. My grandmother died in 2021 at the age of 120 years old. She was a member of every secret society in Liberia. She wasn't educated, but she had a voice. And when we were growing up as 5 sisters, she would always say to us, the world will not see your beauty. So you have to stand and occupy your own space. So today, that is the challenge that we have. In 1989, I was 17 years old when the war started in Liberia. 17, one day after my high school graduation. By the time I was almost 30 or 31, we had killed almost 10% of our population. 250,000 people had died. 500,000 of them were refugees in different countries. 1 million were internally displaced. Women were raped indiscriminately. We have an alleged statistics of 65% of our women raped as a result of the war. Everything had been done, 12 peace talks, and we couldn't even see peace. A group of us women, 7, who had lived and felt the effect of the war, came together with $10 in our handbag. We issued a statement and we decided to challenge authoritarianism in our country. For a year and a half, we protested. We walked when we didn't have money. We spoke truth to power. And when the time came for peace talks, and those who decided they were not going to give us peace talks or peace, we hijacked the hall. When they said they were going to arrest me, I threatened to strip naked. Because there is a moment in every woman's life of Afro descent, of African descent, that you have to challenge the structures that have kept you down. And so as Liberian women, we did that. Today, what is my mandate after winning the Nobel Peace Prize? My mandate is that I must see on the continent of Africa maybe 1,000 laymen, 1,000 of myself, young women who will stand up and challenge systems and structures, young women who will speak for themselves, young women who will, I do not believe in this thing of saying I'm speaking for the girls. I believe in passing the mic. A wise man once told me, empowerment, the word empowerment means giving up some of your power so that others may step into their power. So when you ask the question, what should we do as women of Afro and African descent? What we do now is, as we have, I'm powerful. I kid no one, I'm very powerful. I walk into a room, I intimidate men. I walk into rooms, I speak my truth. I walk into a room with my shoulders up, not arrogantly, but because I live my experience as an African woman, and no one can tell me how I should or should not carry myself, or how my community should be. So as an African woman that have come into power, not by my own will, first from my grandmother, who at 120 years old died, but who trained me, to my mother, and to every woman in my community, my duty now is to pass on that power to other African girls to stand up for themselves. So since winning the prize, I've invested not just my prize money, my time, my energy in educating the next generation of African women. Because I've come to recognize that education is one of the key tools for transforming our societies. So we have to invest not just in formal education, but invest in bringing young girls into spaces to sit with the vice president and talk with her and hear her life story and challenge them and say, go out there and be the best that you can be. distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sisters of African descent, no one is going to hand it to us on a silver platter. No one will give African women and women of Afro descent education, leadership, peace. Franca here is an example of a woman who took the challenge, became a leader, and today she sits here. So to every young woman in this room, don't wait for anyone. You have the agency. In our country, we say, he who is down, fear no fall. As African women, we are down. As women of Afro descent, we are already down. We are underestimated. We are overlooked. So what you need to do now is to try to pull yourself up and shock the world with the power that you have an example. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you really. I want to get started by reiterating my greetings to all these powerful women and wonderful women in front of us that are breaking the chains of oppression, and that even these chains have kept us on our knees. We are standing up to walk upright and with dignity. I am filled with joy standing next to two powerful women. I feel very proud, and I want to tell our master, colleague, our elder, Mayora, like we call our wise people, wise women here. Without having met each other some years ago, you conveyed a part of your power onto us because we saw your documentary in 2014. I saw it about Liberian women. I compared them to the women of north of Cauca, the department I'm from, that were being stripped, as our land was being stripped with illegal mining, poisoning our rivers with the mercury from the processing of the minerals, poisoning our bodies with this water. And I told my colleagues and friends and peers in this community, we need to mobilize. And all of them said, but we never left our town. We're going to be beaten. Something bad's going to happen to us. We're going to end up in jail. And I'd seen your video mobilizing all these other women in Liberia to stop the war in that case. And that was one huge inspiration for us. I want to tell you that this story of yours that we saw through the documentary changed the lives of the women in my community. And from that moment, I was able to see the women of the north of Cauca, the women of my community, walk up straight, raise their voice, speak up loud, even they tell us we sound arrogant. But we've grown in a land, you know, that is hostile. Amidst the violence, and this also forges the character that we need to use to stand up. So thank you so much for that legacy from you. Thank you for conveying a little bit of your power onto us. And I also wanted to say, my mother, because she tells me I'm her child, Lady Minister of the Environment of the DRC, that we also got to meet. We have gotten to see her struggle for resistance in the Democratic Republic of Congo, defending their natural resources and defending their own territories from colonialism, basically that started with a murder of Patri Lumumba. Stories that have also inspired us to tread this path. Our ancestors arrived here. My grandma just turned 95 years of age just a few days ago, and she never learned to read or write. But she did tell me what I did learn, granddaughter, is to give birth to men and women alike that know how to walk the path of life. And that's the legacy of the women in my community, has been the legacy of trying to walk upright, and that has led me and allowed me to arrive where I'm at. I live in a territory where since 1636, since we were kidnapped in Africa and brought here, my people has been in the same region of Colombia. And there we had to fight to birth freedom as well in this country. And now after we released ourselves from the shackles, we still continue trying to stand up to give birth to a dignity, or the restoration of dignity for our people. And you said it before, we're not going to get anything for free. We've never received anything. We need to grab what we require. We need to take it. Black women are not going to be given a position in science or in economy or in political venues. We need to go ahead and occupy the place that we deserve. So, when I did see all these women suffering, I felt huge concern, and we're still suffering because the fact of occupying a place of power like we might have on some occasion doesn't mean that we're immediately transforming. So many years and 500 years of barbaric behavior and oppression towards our people. You can't change that overnight, but we can ensure that we plant a seed that is necessary for us to continue on this path and advance in the right direction. You gave me the mandate of never be tired, and I won't fall tired. Although sometimes my heart hurts, but I won't be tired because I am assured that the conditions that we have today to fight were not the conditions that our ancestors had, and I'm sure of that, as they were tied hands and feet. But we don't have shackles, but we're still trying to birth and give life to real freedom for our people. And the dignity for all of our country is a path that we need to continue working on as a family and always as a community. I would say the last years, no, the last weeks, really, I have seen how black men bring down my legitimacy, and I try and walk this path. They say I'm no good. They say the vice president is good for nothing. And I asked them, why didn't you become vice president? Because it's not about, thank you, it's not about, it's really not about putting ourselves on the side of the oppressor just because it's more comfortable. It's about occupying a space to break all the chains of oppression, chauvinism, and patriarchal society that has kept boots on our necks and not let us breathe properly for a time. Regretfully, not all black men, of course, not all men of different races behave like this, but some of them do. And since I started with my social advocacy and becoming a leader, they tried to kill me. Bombing attacks, and now the vice president's office, or during the time I've been in this office, they tried to murder my family, they tried to murder me. And others are telling me not to re-victimize myself, just for raising my voice with courage, just for not accepting what I consider is just not right. And like I said in my speech, sometimes raising your voice takes a toll. But I come from a Cimarron people of women and men, that in my region, and the stories I know of the women in the times of independence in the northern Cauca region of Colombia, many of them were burned alive. The runaway slaves were daring to, fight for liberty. So, the granddaughter of those women, I tell you, will continue opening the doors. We will continue raising our voice as long as it takes and whatever it takes. Regardless of what it takes in this struggle against the capitalist system that is destroying our larger house, that is putting the life of everything on the planet at peril, that is extinguishing pockets of life around the planet every day and has us facing a climate change that presents us with crisis in terms of mobility, that is treating immigrants like criminals now. That polycrisis, where the academics call it, that has us full of uncertainties now. This is not going to go away, resolve itself, trampling on the fight of the Afro-descendant peoples and trampling on the struggle of women before. The fight against the neoliberal model is anti-racist, otherwise it won't prosper. The struggle against the neoliberal model needs to be anti-chauvinistic or it won't be effective. And I didn't arrive to the Vice President's office to fit any mold or to accommodate myself to others or to endorse nice speeches. I came to the Vice President's office to accompany a man that has fought against the oppressive system of this country, President Gustavo Petro, but to bring justice to my people as well. To transform inequality, disparity conditions that this country, that my people, has had to live in this country for so long. That's why I arrived here. Not to sit on a chair, not to occupy a position. I'm not interested in that. I came so that from this position, I can contribute to the transformation of that inequality, and that disparity, and that historical injustice that have suffered so many people in this country of ours. And sometimes speaking the way I'm doing, the way I'm speaking has a toll, and I know why it takes a toll, because someone said right here that whenever we occupy these spaces, the establishment is afraid. The establishment is scared, feels uncomfortable, out of position, because we don't speak from the established political language. The same stories they'll tell in ordinary people all the time. We speak from our own reality that we are trying to change. And I've fought all my strength until now so that from this position, we can advance in transforming such realities. Always aware that this is not the way to transform them. Not with this structural system that will take some time to transform. That we cannot give up on is on hope that our dignity will be restored. We cannot renounce the hope of having a country at peace. We cannot give up on the hope of a humanity that today can be at the service of life for all of us and not at the service of this necropolitics or the politics of death. And stand firm as I walk between women, between all of our peoples, among our great diversity, as black men and women, as indigenous peoples and peasants and farmers, walking alongside the LGBTIQ plus community. Because today I tell this community, as I've also heard some other people say that I'm discriminating LGBTQ plus community. And when I arrived at the Vice President's office, there was a counselor's office for the assurance of LGBTQI plus communities' rights. And I created a special manager office for these social groups. And from there, I started leading myself a state policy that will ensure their rights. That's the reason why today I can say that under my personal leadership, the COMPES, or National Level Development Program, was created for ensuring the rights of the LGBTQ plus community in our country. I don't discriminate because I know what discrimination means. The motives that led me to speak about the two individuals I mentioned that I respect are not on account of discrimination. They're motivated for different reasons, but just so many lies have been said about my leadership and what I do. And all of these are just trying to make the people hate the Vice President. And with all of that, all that they're seeking is that dirty political work makes the Vice President be hated and disappear
from the political spectrum in this country. Unfortunately, this country will never be able to do politics again without the voice of black women. This country will not be able to ever again do politics without the voice of the peoples, of the no ones in this country. Because those people in this country, the no ones, realized that they have power. That if they use that power, they will be able to continue moving forward in the transformation of the conditions of being forgotten and abandoned and full of historical violence that they have experienced. They have tried to tell people that I am now part of the elite because I ride a helicopter. And my partner, my husband, who's here, and he joins me, he knows how afraid I am of those vehicles. I am terrified. But I have to use those tools due to security issues to safeguard my life. But those who criticize me because of that are not thinking about it in terms of safety. Because what they would want is for me to disappear and for all of us nobodies to disappear. But today, I can tell Colombia that I have my heart in the right place. With the same rebellious voice that you heard from me 4 years ago. Walking through the territory, listening to people. sometimes with pain. I would like to solve the problems of those communities instantly, but sadly, even though I'm here, difficulties cannot be resolved that easily. But I have heard and I know the pains that the Colombian people have. I know the needs of each Colombian in this country. I know the needs of women and their diversity. I know the needs of youth. And I say this as a mother. I have my 2 children here. And after 3 years, for the first time, they're here with me in a public event. Because they were out of the country. And it hurts me that the mothers of this country are losing their children due to violence. 6,000 young people die every year in this country as a result of violence. And this has to continue bringing us together as women and people who love life, because we have to stop death. And to stop death, we have to come together. And to build from the different stages and places where we're at. And to be able to stop death, we have to occupy these spaces of power and of decision making. So today, I'm here as your Vice President, and we continue to be here for this next year that we still have. It is not true that I will resign to the mandate given to me by the Colombian people. I will not resign from the Vice President's role. If God and the ancestors permit, I will leave August 7th next year. We're firm, we continue working, we continue building. Our reconnection with our mother Africa, we're still working on this. We continue opening up doors. One of the most wonderful things that has happened to me while being here is to have had the possibility to go to Africa as Vice President of this country after our ancestors left Africa as enslaved people. They came here as enslaved people, and I voluntarily went there under conditions of freedom, and that is the pathway that we have to continue to go down. That is the road that we have to continue building. And I take advantage of this opportunity to thank my mother, who says, "Don't talk to me about vice presidencies." My dad, who had to leave his territory because of the attacks that he has suffered. My 2 children, Carlos Adrian, Kevin, and of course, my partner, Jernei Pinillos, who has been my emotional support as well in this journey. Of course, my 2 grandmothers, Graciela and Leonor, who also, through their wisdom, say, "Keep going, you're doing well." Thank you all for being here, and we will continue to be here until dignity becomes the norm.
Yeah, we should go. Let's go so that Angela gave a speech.
Okay, please. Hola, les pido a todas que...
I ask you all to please take your seats. This is not over.
Muchas gracias, gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And with these exciting remarks, provoking words from all these wonderful women, we had more questions, but we will leave it at this because we have the intervention by Dr. Angela Davis. And we all want to hear from her, so let's please give a big round of applause for our three panelists. Let's give a strong round of applause to these powerful women who have been present in different decision-making spaces, using power in pro of the communities that have helped us to transform themselves and grow. Because together, we transform. Together, we can make it possible. And that is why, together, we are trying to obtain the restoration of our dignity. It has been a wonderful session. We have had a session that is still not over. So I ask you all, invite you all to take your seats so that you can get ready, because I would like to tell you a bit. We started this morning with our hearts full, with the hope and the expectation of an international gathering that has brought together the borders of the diaspora, and this international gathering together for the restoration of our dignity. An encounter that invited us to connect with art, theater, touching our hearts, making us aware of the importance of artistic speeches also being part as transformative tools of the struggles faced by Black Afro-descendant communities, Raizal, Palenquera, and diasporic communities, as well from the perspective of women and girls. We have the chance to, through the initiative developed by ICBF with the Atrapasueño houses, we were able to get to know exactly that, the dreams and desires of girls in the different parts of Colombia. Through Samantha from Cali and Valerie from Tuluá, we have the chance to recognize what our girls are thinking, and especially what they are requiring and what they demand from this historical moment, so that these struggles can transcend through generations. Then we have the chance to develop our first dialogue space called African Women and Afro-descendant Women in Spaces of Power and Political Participation. There we have the wonderful opportunity to listen to women such as June Summer, former president of the Permanent Forum of the UN. We also talked to Chantal Champuguavita, Minister of Human Rights of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Epsi Campbell-Bauer also was part of this presentation, together with Teresa Mojica Morga, Paula Cabezas, Nazli Lucumi Diaz, and Vicenta Moreno. That conversation, which was led by Diana Bechet, gave us important elements about the journey that these women have gone through to be able to be present in decision-making spaces in the different areas of the world. Afterwards, we have the chance to connect in our second conversation panel. This panel, which was about the identities that are shaped through culture, memory, and the knowledge of women and Afro-descendant peoples. In this panel, we have the great opportunity to hear from Rohaya Diallo. We have the chance to hear from Gina Day. Also, we have the Master of Arts Nidia Góngora together with Jurani Diaz, Lina Lugo, Lisette Quiñones, Consuelo Cruz Arboleda, and Lucia Solis. This conversation, moderated by Beatriz Balante, gave us an opportunity of knowledge in terms of the opinions of these women. We then had a dialogue that took us through economic justice for the care of life and a bet for freedom and dignity for Afro-descendants. Miriam Magelli, Hilary Brown, Natasha George, Daniel Almeida, Diana Sofia Garzón, Josefina Klinger, Marilena Quiñones, together with Glenda Palacios, were present with us. And we just witnessed this panel that connected us with the transformation that we had together through the experience of Limagoy, Ipasaiba, and our Vice President, Francia Elena Marquez Mina. And I would like to invite you all to take your seats, because I don't know if that is the case for you, but when I was in college and I connected to the process of Black activism, I had the chance of reading what she wrote and to think through the ideas that she has offered for the world and to connect to the realities that she had to live in the defense of civil rights in the U.S. And it is now time for us to listen to Angela Davis's presentation. But for that, there are several things that we need to keep in mind. The first thing is that this event is inviting us to be together. So let's please fill up those empty spaces that we have, and those at the top come to the front so that we can all be together to greet our dear philosopher, academic, thinker, and writer from the United States. And she has had the opportunity to share her thoughts with the world. She is a key figure in the civil rights movement in the U.S. and around the world. She has dedicated her life to human rights, intersectional feminism, anti-racism, and prison abolitionism. Her work is essential to understanding how race, gender, and class intersect in the structures of oppression. But beyond this, Angela Davis represents resistance, radical thought, dignity, and liberation for millions of women, Black communities, and marginalized peoples around the globe. Her presence in this international gathering is a true gift and an inspiration so that we can continue down this path. Let's give a strong round of applause in this historical moment for Angela Davis.
Good evening. Buenas tardes. I feel as if there's nothing left to be said after the phenomenal speech that you heard from your Vice President. Francia Elena Marquez Mina. So I had a longer text, and I've cut it in half, I think, So bear with me. I may try to cut out further passages as we move along, because I think that it's probably time to go eat now. It's probably time to digest, all of the amazing ideas that we've been able to encounter today. But let me begin by thanking Vice President Francia Marquez Mina for calling upon us during these difficult times when fascism and racism threaten to turn back the historical clock, to come together, to stand up here in Cali, Colombia, in defense of our collective dreams of a world of justice, equality, and freedom. So thank you. Thank you, Francia, for insisting that we recognize and pay tribute not only to the historical and continued oppression of Black women and girls all over the planet, but that we understand the crucial role of Black women's collective leadership in ushering in radical change for all who need it. I am especially honored to be in the presence of so many phenomenal Black women from all over the world. I'll mention Epsie Campbell because I met her when she was vice president. I met her in Costa Rica. And let me say that I'm equally honored to be here with all of you. And I would mention every single name, but I know that time is at a premium now. Let me say that we are here today together for the restoration of our dignity. Juntas para la restauración de nuestra dignidad. To all of you who have gathered here today, thank you for adding your bodies, your voices, your hopes, and supporting the work of Francia Marquez, the work that she has done here in Colombia, and the reverberations all over the world. Together, we are powerful. And I think we understand that we can join hands across national borders with millions of others who believe in a better world and who believe in the work Black women everywhere are doing to transform that belief into our future history. And so this International Day for Women and Girls of African Descent is being observed all over the world, and hopefully in the years to come, ever larger numbers of people will be joining this celebration. Now, I want to begin by saying that I personally have good reason to believe in the power of women, and especially in the power of Black women. Many years ago in 1970, I was imprisoned by the US government and charged with 3 capital crimes: murder, kidnapping, conspiracy. If the trial had unfolded the way the US government intended, I would either have been executed some 50 years ago, or I would have been imprisoned for life. I certainly would not be here with you today, generating energy for our upcoming struggles. Black women, women of the global South, women of color in the US, in other countries, South America, Caribbean women led the struggle for my freedom. Led the struggle for my freedom. So many radical women, communist women, progressive people of all genders, working class people, human beings whose labor has made this world livable for all of us. They all joined the movement for my freedom. And so I owe my life and my freedom to them. And as I always try to point out, if my own name is recognizable, it is not because of anything that I have done. It is because of the work of those millions of people who joined a global movement for my freedom that became so powerful that not even the most powerful men in the US government could stop it. I will never forget that everything I've been able to do since 1972 is due to the contributions of people, and in the first place of Black women, who organized all over the world for my freedom. And as I stand here today, I realize that many of your mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers were also involved in that movement. And I've often pointed out that at that particular time, Richard Nixon was president. I don't know if you remember Richard Nixon or if you know who he was, but he wanted to usher me into the gas chamber. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. He wasn't a friend of mine. J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI, and he used the entire might of that agency to deliver me into the arms of my executors. I wouldn't keep repeating this if there were not a moral to the story. People power, women's power, movement power can defeat the power that appears to be undefeatable. And in my case, not even the most powerful men in the world were able to carry out their plan, because Black women led movements calling for my freedom. And I think that that is why I have been permitted to live so long, over 8 decades. My next birthday in a few months I will be 82. Such a long life, not the 120 years that we just heard about, but 80, that's good enough. I think it's because I can personally bear witness to the power of Black women, to radical human power, and to its capacity to achieve what often appears to be beyond the bounds of possibility. When I watched this phenomenal film, Igualada, I'm sure you've all seen it, right? And of course it is about Francia's life and her campaign for the presidency as the culmination of her efforts to defend her people's right to live and fish and mine on the land which they have legally owned for hundreds of years. I was thinking that she is the incarnation of Black women's impulse to organize collectively, to assert what is good and right, to stand steadfastly with those who are targeted by the economically and politically powerful. I cannot really tell you how happy I am to be here in Colombia, here in Cali. especially in support of Francia Marquez's consequential leadership, especially supporting demands of Afro-Colombian and indigenous communities. And even though this is a very difficult moment, it's a difficult moment here in this country, I feel very privileged to have been able to hear her powerful words regarding her own current situation, to engage in anti-racist activism, as she knows, raising the demands of the communities that are most oppressed, not only benefits the specific communities in questions, but the process benefits virtually everyone except perhaps those that directly benefit from exploitation, racism, and heteropatriarchy. I first met Francia in 2010 in California, at a time when she was fully involved in the defense of her people's right to live on and to mine their land, which they had inhabited since the 1600s, as free people who had refused to be enslaved and had emancipated themselves. They were some of the first Maroons in the Americas. The passion with which she described her people's struggles drew me and so many others into the Solidarity campaign. And so when Gina Dent and I were invited to teach in Bogotá by Dr. Mara Viveros, we also took this opportunity to visit La Tuma and to see Francia in her ancestral homeland. We're very deeply thankful to Tiana Paschal for helping us make this journey a reality. And I want to tell you that memories of that trip are forever imprinted on my mind. I know that I am decades older than Francia. She's a little girl in relation to where I am in life. But I can say with certainty that she has been one of the most important influences on my life. Thank you, Francia. And sometimes when I think that, I've been around a long time, I've given enough of my life to the movement, I think about Francia and her struggles and her resilience and the joy she always exudes. So what does it mean to stand with Black women? It means to recognize that when Black women move forward, they do not move forward alone. They bring the entire family, the entire community, the entire world. So families, communities, worlds also move forward when Black women move forward. It was Anna Julia Cooper, some of you may know her name, who wrote in 1892 a book called A Voice from the South. And she says, only the Black woman can say, when and where I enter, in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without special patronage, then and there the whole Negro race enters with me. She could have also said, the whole world enters with me. A few words about this dynamic. Black trans women are not usually allowed to stand for all Black women. The they're usually imagined as a category aside from black women assigned female from birth. But what I would like to suggest is that if we attend to the issues that are most pressing for black trans women, all black women will benefit. Indeed, women of many racial backgrounds and many cultural heritages will benefit. In fact, I will go so far as to say that in the long run, all women benefit and all black people benefit. And in the very long run, all humans benefit. So what am I trying to say? What I'm saying is that if we commit ourselves to struggling for a world in which racism and heteropatriarchy and the violent exploitation, the violent capitalist exploitation of working class people will have been eradicated, we will not be able to stop there. We have to recognize that there are other living beings who deserve to be emancipated as well. And so I was going to talk a little bit about the importance of solidarity with non-human animals, because they're a part of our environment. We live together. But maybe I'll save that for another time. I'll just plant the idea. Because I think we understand, as Francia and all of the many participants in the struggles that she's led have insisted, if we want to generate solidarity with human beings who are subject to racism, subject to heteropatriarchy, subject to class exploitation, we also have to protect the earth. We have to protect the waters of the earth, its minerals, its plants, and of course, its animals. And we count ourselves among those animals on the earth. Black women all over the world teach us that it is not only individuals we should revere, but rather the collective spirit that animates struggles for freedom and justice and equality all over the world. You know, although we are increasingly able to single out individual black women, and I know that Francia's name will go down in the history of this country and the history of the world as most of the globe's, as one of the globe's most important black women. But we should recognize that when we praise individuals, we should also be praising collectivities, because black women rarely stand alone. And so I know that you will not allow your vice president to stand alone. You know, I was going to say a few words about
y hablar un poco de 1955 y cuando se hizo el boicot en Montgomery, en Alabama. No sé los que conocen a Rosa Parks y su ejemplo, ¿verdad? Pero me pregunto si les interesa o saben quién era la persona responsable de que fuera exitoso. Es
the black movement, the black liberation movement, what was known then as the black civil rights movement. But who were the people who were compelled to ride the bus in those days? It was black women. It was black women domestic workers, black women who were maids and cooks and washerwomen And they were the ones who refused to ride the bus. It was their collective imagination of a better world that drove them to refuse to ride the bus. And that is why the boycott was so successful. The story of black people, black women standing up in a small town in Alabama, standing up against racism, inspired communities all over the world to fight for equality. And so when I think about those women walking to their jobs as domestic workers in Montgomery, Alabama, I also think about the Afro-Colombian women who marched from Cauca to Bogotá in 2014. The black women who joined Francia on a journey to demand justice, freedom, and equality. They were marching for their communities. They were marching for the protection of their environment. They were marching for the safety of people all over this country, all over Colombia. They were marching for justice, and not only for Colombians. They were marching for Brazilians, and they were enacting the legacy of Marielle Franco and Luisa Barros. They were marching for Uruguayans, for Chileans. They were marching for us in the United States. They were marching for people and environments all over the world. This is why black women and girls matter. This is why we are observing this International Day for Black women and girls of African descent. Now, moving towards the conclusion of my remarks, and you may have noticed that I've said very little about what's happening in the U.S. right now. And you know what is happening in the U.S. You know who is the president who presumes to occupy the office of the presidency. Well, I should tell you that Gina and I are really enjoying our time here in Colombia, especially in Afro-Colombia, in Ali. Because the burden of the immediate presence of fascism has been temporarily lifted. It is such a relief, however temporary, to be here with you all. And as we reflect on what would be required for the global restoration of collective dignity, the person who presumes to be the president in the country where we live is daily attempting to guarantee that we're pushed back into the era of history where black people were assumed to be in perpetual servitude. Now, I'm somewhat embarrassed to face you today because we should have done the work to guarantee his defeat. My deep apologies to all of you for our failure to accomplish this. But he will not be in office very long. Fascism is not the future of our country. It is not the future of the world. And just as you guaranteed the rise of your vice president, you will stand with her and protect her. And in North America, we will be looking to you for inspiration. Colombia is changing. Afro-Colombians are refusing to be silent targets of racism, just as Afro-Brazilians have risen up and have said no to racism. The same process is happening all over Latin America, in Uruguay, in Chile, in Argentina, etc. And people everywhere in today's world are expressing their solidarity with the Palestinian people. We are saying no to the settler colonial state of Israel. You can applaud, board. Okay. So, yes, we are saying no to the settler colonial state of Israel. We are saying no to genocide in Gaza, which is also to express solidarity with those who are struggling in Congo and in Sudan. The billionaires, the capitalists, the fascists, the backward reactionaries. Let me start over again, because I almost had a slip of the tongue. The billionaires, the capitalists, the fascists, the backward reactionaries think that the future belongs to them. But they are absolutely wrong. They are absolutely wrong. The future belongs to that beautiful 10-year-old on the first panel who told us what her generation wants. And we know that they desperately need a world free of racism, patriarchy, economic violence. That is what the vast majority of people around the world would like to see. And so on this International Day of Black women and girls of African descent, let us all embrace each other. Let us recommit. Let us ensure the continuation of our collective fight for freedom. A luta continua.
What an honor, what emotion, what a privilege it's been to hear in this auditorium. Angela Davis, let's stand up. Let's stand up for Angela Davis. Woman that's dedicated her life, her thoughts to generate intellectual legacy to talk about racial justice and of equality. Her struggle has always been a seed that resounds deep within our hearts and our history, and then everything that is ours. Today, more than ever, we reaffirm that the fight of Afro-descendant women is a global, powerful struggle for the future of all of humanity. Our presence in this meeting is historical for us, all of us, men, women, them, they alike. And with that official picture, this historical and very representative picture, to inspire the generations to come that are, to show them that we're making history right now and will continue to do so in the struggle for Black communities, so that dignity becomes the norm for different futures for all our children. Well, I have an invitation for all of you now. I've been asked to ask all of you from the Vice President's office directly that is inviting us to something very special right now. And you know that for us, cultural processes are determinant, are crucial, and in any larger process that we are engaged in. So let's put our fists up, everybody. This is another picture that will frame how historical this event has been for us. Photographers are ready for this picture. Another take, please, another take. Let's do this picture one more time. Everybody's ready? The fist up, knowing what that represents for this beautiful international coming together.
Y como les contaba,
and as I was telling you, culture being such a determinant factor for all of us, the closing of this event, of course, needs to have musical flavor to it. So getting ready